Sorry about that. So our next presenter is Rose Mcdermott, and she's going to be doing coding web applets with R, and that will start at 7:30. So we have about 10 minutes for that. So I will be back with you shortly.
So good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank all of you present for attending my capstone presentation tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rose Mcdermott. I'm a current senior at GHS, and this year I decided to pursue a year-long capstone project called Coding Web Applets with R. So why I chose this topic. I became interested in the broader areas of computer science and computer programming during my junior year, which was last year for me, when I took level 1 computer science principles at GHS. The main focus of this class was on Java, but while I did learn a lot of Java, as I would in 1 year, I still wanted to do something useful with it. So because Java would have taken me a lot longer to fully learn, I turned to R, which is a statistical language that was much easier to use. And also in my senior year, I wanted to be able to take AP Computer Science, but because it just didn't fit into my schedule, I decided this was the perfect opportunity for me to use it as an independent study, so Capstone. This was a great enrichment opportunity for me in computer science, and it really helped me achieve my personal goals of making something both interesting and applicable to our daily lives. So before I get into this, 4 basic components to understand about this project is 1, most importantly, R. So R is a coding language, just like Java and HTML might be languages that you've heard of before. R is a language, but it has a different purpose, which I'll explain in a few slides. It's very important to note the differences between the 4 components listed here because each one has a different function in the project that I did. R Studio is the IDE. So for those of you who don't know what an IDE is, it's an integrated development environment. Basically, a software with an editor and a window to let the user interact with it, to actually be able to use R. So the window is where you would type R, and the editor is where you would see the direct impacts of what you decided to run. R Shiny is a generic package. It allows you to create the application. And then gtrends-R is the package I used. An easier way to remember or think about what gtrends-R is it's Google Trends with R. So basically that's what I'm going to be focusing on for my project. So we're going to be talking about how to track Google Trends using this computer language. So what is R? What is it used for? I put 2 definitions here to help understand in more technical terms, but then I'll explain in English as well. So according to rproject.org, it's a free software environment for statistical computing and graphics. It compiles and runs on a wide variety of Unix platforms, Windows, and Mac OS. And according to the Wikipedia version, it's a programming language and free software environment for statistical computing and graphics supported by the R Foundation for Statistical Computing. The R language is widely used among statisticians and data miners for developing statistical software and data analysis. So for my project, the most important part was the words data mining and statistical computing. So if you think about it in just those 2 terms, I needed to use R and Google to mine information from Google searches to be put to use to track these trends. So I will show you my code in a few seconds. And then R Shiny, which is the second thing I mentioned 2 slides back. It's an open source R package that provides an elegant and powerful web framework for building web applications. Shiny helps you turn your analyses into interactive web applications without requiring HTML, CSS, or JavaScript knowledge. So if you remember from before, I mentioned that I did basic Java last year at Guilford High School. Unfortunately, Java is a huge language, and to learn it to the degree to which I felt comfortable to make an app with, I would need much more time than I had. So the good thing about R and R Shiny is it offered me a way to use computer programming without having to know any extensive language. I just had to learn how to use the software, which was easy because I would just learn as I went along. So I've underlined a few keywords here to help make it easier to understand basically what these are in simpler terms. So open source means the programmer, or me in this case, can change the software in any way they choose. So I used RShiny to make the Google data mining app. So that was the way I changed my software. A web app is an app published to the internet to be used by anyone. This was actually a integral part of my project because I could make it, but then I could also publish it. And this was part of my goal going into this project, was to make it available to everyone who I wanted to use it. And I'm hoping the community here will find it useful in some way, because it'll all be on the internet and it'll be available to everyone. And no prior knowledge was needed. So anything I learned from computer science last year gave me a good background. And then I just learned as I went from there. So it wasn't as hard as learning a new language like Python or HTML, and it wasn't time consuming either, as I'll break it down in a few slides. So the function of this was, as I've kind of explained before, the gtrends R package. It's a Google search trends data retrieval. So if you break that down into simpler terms, let's say you look up food on the internet, and then you look up food on this app that I've created. It should show a graph of every time someone has looked up food on the internet, and it will show a trend. So all of the points will be connected, and let's say there's a huge rise or huge drop in the data, you'll be able to connect that to something else happening in the world at that time. So it's good for if you want to track human opinions, if you want to track anything big socially or anything, any opinions going on, this is what you would do. So the importance of data from Google is that it's a reflection, a direct reflection of trends that are going on in the world. The ideas provide trackable information that people could just look up and keep track of. So it's a direct reflection of people's interests at any given point in time. People can choose the keyword, the time frame, or the geographic location, as you'll see when I give the demo of the app. To keep things simple for this demo, though, I put keyword as a search bar. So I'll open up the floor to anyone who wants me to enter any keywords. And the time frame has just been for the last 5 or so years. And geographic location is just limited to US, China, and worldwide, just to keep things easy. And another thing about this app is that it has one main limitation, which is that you can only use this app for information only as long as Google's been around, because before that, obviously, there is no Google data. You can, however, track information about current opinions about historical trends. So just why did I take a full year to do this capstone project? Why did I not decide to do semester 1 or semester 2? So I decided on a year-long project because this, going into it, seemed like a hard process that consisted of many steps. When I was thinking it out at the beginning of the year, I realized I needed to have a sort of schedule. And this schedule initially came down to what I saw the outcome being and how much research I'd have to do, how much of it would be coding, debugging, and then finally finding examples that worked to show people. So when visualizing the outcome, a lot of it was thinking about what I wanted to do, thinking about how I said earlier, making something interesting and useful at the same time, and then discussing with my advisor and mentor about what I thought could be beneficial to both myself and my community. This also included finally deciding on my topic. So for the research part, which was also going to be time consuming, I had to find sources and I had to schedule out when I would work, when I could make time to fit 120 hours of work into 1 year. Because with everything else going on, 120 hours is a lot, so you have to really dive in and set your times down. So this is what I explained earlier. I was going to break down my process. So if you look at the percents here, this is kind of how I streamlined my work for the year. So the scheduling was about 5% of the time. Teaching myself the language, which as I mentioned, it wasn't too time consuming, but I still needed to look things up on the internet. And then coding took 30% of the time, and then debugging also took 30% of the time, because with coding, errors can get a little tricky sometimes and frustrating. So everything like that needed a good amount of time to be set aside. And then finally, I needed to make sure it ran, and I needed to find examples to show people, the audience today. So that was 5% of my time. So finally, here's a picture of my code. I just want to stress that the code itself isn't the main part of my project. It's the use of the app that I want to focus on. It's the functionality of this app and how to apply it to things going on in our world today. So this looks scary, I know, but it's so it's basically, this is, if you look up in this top corner, there's something called a server and a UI. In basic terms, server is just the function of the code, and the UI is user interface, UI. So that's the appearance of my code, the graphics, the graph, the if I have any buttons, if I have any search bars, drop down menu, stuff like that. So I thought of it to just show you the UI because this particular part of my code is showing United States, China, worldwide. Those are the 3 locations I showed you earlier. So I don't want anyone to get too confused by this. It does look a little intimidating, so I'm going to move on to the examples and my challenges. Okay, so my biggest challenge during this entire process was probably getting it to work because of the debugging. Why? Because many times it was hard to find the error or errors. Sometimes there would be unknown reasons, so the app wouldn't run on the first try, but would run on the second try with no changes made. Or it would just be something I just didn't know about R enough to fix the code on that try. So I'd have to either talk to my mentor or look it up on the internet and, eventually come down to a solution that worked for both myself and my code. And this took up a big chunk of my time. So with such a huge variety of potential issues, I had to find ways to go about solving each one with the different method. And the essential solution skeletons I came up with were this. So if the first problem was that I just couldn't find the error, the program was good about highlighting the spot for me in the code and the research, and I would research that particular error. So one of my biggest examples is when I was trying to get the graphics section, I needed to figure out how to put buttons and drop down menus and search bars into the left-hand side of my screen. So that took a good amount of research. But once I figured out what I was doing, it was easy to get it to work. So then problem 2 was just random runtime errors. So if the app failed to run the first time, I would run it a second time automatically, and just to prove that there was no other error, because sometimes it would just start running again. And another thing about this is that a lot of times the code took a very long time to run, so it was hard to tell if it hadn't stopped running or if it was still running and there was an error. So I needed to be patient with this whole process. My third main problem was not knowing enough about R to get through a particular section. And like I mentioned before, this was an easy problem to fix because the internet has so much information from other people who've gone through the same thing, other people who have done the same research with R, and I could just use their problems and how they fixed it to get through my own problems, because I didn't need to teach myself an entire language. I was just teaching myself what I needed to finish this project to get the app to work, which is the learning on the go mentality. So the 5 sources I used were RStudio glossary within R. That was just something that pops up on the R application, or the editor, that if I have any questions, I type it into the help bar and it comes up full, like back of a book glossary kind of thing. It just has everything I need there. And then if I needed any supplemental help, the next 3 sources I used. So maybe some of you, if you're familiar with coding, you've heard of Code Academy. It's just a basic place where you go to learn R from scratch, which I was trying to avoid during this entire thing, but sometimes I needed to go on and refresh my memory on, how to solve a basic issue. And then finally, an interview with my mentor. Honestly, because my mentor, he's my father, so I get to see him a lot. I was able to talk to him throughout the year. So there was one formal interview, but there was many dispersed over the entire year. So it's more like a fluid thing. Okay, so real life applications of this app, which is the main part of my project, which I want to stress. So it's web-based, which means it's been published to the internet. It's available for anyone to use. The link will be later in the presentation. If any of you are interested, I'm going to leave it up so you can click on it whenever you need, if you need to use it. It's supplementary for if you have any questions about correlations on the web. So that could mean if you have any personal questions or just personal inklings that you want to find out, see if there is a trend, just for interest's sake. And then popular ideas, popular trends, so what's happening with society right now, what's happening with the virus, all that stuff can be tracked on this app. You could see historical trends, current opinions of historical trends, and so much more. And as Guilford High School students know, many of you have taken AP Statistics and you've had the final project at GHS. It could also be used for that. If you wanted to back up any of your research for the stats project with any Google information, this is perfect for that. So there's so many potential uses for this technology, and the fact that it's web-based makes it accessible for everyone. So here's some examples of the analysis that I picked. So what you're going to see first is this. So this is the app. This is what you see when you click on the link. So this is, for example, let's say you click on the GHS website. You click on the link and you're brought to the Guilford High School homepage. Same way, if you click on my link, think of it as this is the homepage for the app. It's centralized to here. It has, I can't use it here because this is just a picture to show you, but here's a search bar, here's a drop-down menu for geography and time period. So the user, if any of you decided to use this, you would enter whatever term you were interested in, where in the world you wanted to look this up for, and in what time period. So it goes from past 90 days to past 12 months to, you could go by 2020 to all the way to 2017. So any of that. So this is just basic. And notice how this screen is blank because it's going to show a graph. So what this is I decided to track COVID-19 and flu because obviously COVID-19 has basically changed the entire 2020, and it's probably also changed opinions about common flu. So if you'll see up here, COVID-19 is in pink and flu is in blue. So you'll notice here that before the whole panic started about the virus, the flu was way up above that. But once the coronavirus took over, you see the pink line above everything else, but flu hasn't completely gone. People are still obviously concerned about that, but it's just below the radar of the coronavirus. So just to recap, what this is showing is people's searches on the internet. So let's say, why would you search for the flu if you have a loved one who might be sick, or if you might be sick and you're just looking up symptoms or anything like that? Personal opinion is so important for this app because that's what you're tracking here. People worried about the virus would be tracking it here, and that is what you're seeing. So you have to remember that this is people's opinions, not actual, this isn't like something you would look up on a Google search. This is the number of Google searches. And the next slide is another example. So this is a graph of COVID-19 and toilet paper, because if you remember in the beginning, which is what this toilet paper spike represents so greatly, is because in the beginning, we were all panicking about toilet paper, hand sanitizer, stuff like that. And it was the time when the stores were empty. And so this is when the first panic struck, as you can see by that peak, because now while the virus is still going on, the blue line is slowly going down because people know that they'll have resources, or people aren't as worried about it anymore. So basically, remembering that this app shows people's opinions over time based on what they're looking up on Google. This peak represents people's worry. I mean, they're worried about not getting their toilet paper, or, and it's a viable worry because of the virus. It's also rising up here. So this is a perfect example of why this app is useful. So I'm going to go to a project demo. Will the screen, will it show my demo if I'm sharing the PowerPoint?
Yes, because I can see that you're now in a different screen.
Okay. And then so another thing to remember is that throughout this whole process, like everything takes kind of a while to load. So you can see it now, right? I hope.
I see I see your site, the
The Google.
McDermott.shiny app,
Yes. Okay.
Google Trends Analytics. Yep.
Yes. Perfect. Okay. So I'd
Okay.
actually like to open up the floor to any people watching. Maybe just type it in the chat. So give me a keyword to look up. It can be anything, just health. Okay. So we're going to keep it to United States and past 90 days. Let's see what the graph says. It's just loading. Okay. So what can this tell us? So if you were to draw a line, I guess, through the center of each of these curves, it would show like a slight bump here. But notice how health has, I guess, since Google has been around, we can also check past dates, but it's been always up and down, like a constant. That's been constant. But you can see how when the main first panic struck, this was a little bit higher on average than everything else here. Does anyone else have anything else I should look up?
Can you look up hand sanitizer?
Yes, that's a good one. Okay, keep it to the past 90 days. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a really good one because obviously, like the toilet paper, it shows how worried people were about not being able to have hand sanitizer when the bout of the virus. Now we can see it's still happening, but people just aren't as worried about what's happening with hand sanitizer. They know they have it, but when that period of the stores was empty, like now, so that's represented by that peak. Okay. So yeah, I think those are two very good examples. And if you guys wanted to look up anything like any historical events, so remember how looking up a historical event would just give today's opinions about the historical event. So I could just say that with everything going on health-wise and socially right now, you probably won't get a lot of search volume about other things. But again, if you ever decided to use this app in your free time, in a different time period, you might actually find some good information. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the rest of my PowerPoint. Okay. So that was the project demo, and that right there on the screen, that's the link, and I'm going to put it on the classroom. If anyone else wants to use it, just let me know. Okay, so future improvements and related projects. This was actually something I was trying to squeeze into this year's project, but I just think I was better off focusing on the Google data. So many of us today use social media sites, and it's really amplified, uses for business, school, like stuff like that. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, many more worldwide. So imagine applying this data mining technology to social media. So imagine like the graph you just saw. You look up information for something on Instagram instead, and you see what maybe teenagers are thinking, or you see, and you can even bring it to like if you did Facebook, you could see like the age group differences there. So I mean, it's just if you use a bunch of these apps together, you could get like a correlation between many of them that help you see more about people's opinions over time. For example, Twitter with the capital R at the end is another package like gtrends are, which, as a reminder, this was the Google data mining package. And this could be for Twitter, and this could be used to query Twitter usage among other projects. So this would be getting information from Twitter about people's opinions. And finally, to wrap up my project, I'd like to extend a great thanks to my mentor, James McDermott, for helping me so much on my capstone project. Without his help, my project would not be where it is today. And because my mentor is also my father, I was also able to ask him any questions whenever I had them, and he was always available and willing to help me, which was a great resource. So thank you very much. And to my advisor, Miss Sarah Wagner, she was a great help to me during my capstone project. From always making sure to check in on me regularly to just being one of my favorite teachers, she did an amazing job helping me with my project. And for that, I'd like to extend a huge thanks to her. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who made this capstone project possible. Ms. McDonald, thank you. And I hope people watching, people in our community will find this technology useful. Thank you.
Well done, Rose. Wow, I'm just really so impressed by this, just blown away.
Oh, thanks.
So when did the thought of this start for you? Did it start this school year or did it start prior to the school year?
Hold on, how do I resume the...
Oh, sure, sorry. So you just want to click stop share and then that'll let you come back on in red. Yep.
Awesome, okay. I would say the end of last year, after I realized I couldn't take AP Computer Science, so I definitely wanted to keep doing it, so I just decided to do a capstone about it. So,
would you say, or how would you say your AP Computer Science curriculum and computer science work at Guilford High School helped with this?
So last year I took level 1 computer science with Mrs. Russo, and I really enjoyed that class. It did give me a good background on Java, which is a different language, and I learned how to use that to some extent. But I also didn't know if I'd be able to use Java to the extent that I wanted to. I wanted to be able to use it to, make an app like I did here. So I just wouldn't have had the amount of background knowledge with Java to do that. So R, like I explained, is just easier to use, and it would get my result faster, and I'd be learning as I went along. So,
Makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to open up the chat option for people to make comments and ask questions. I'm just going to look back to, I think, a few people were posting here. So Mr. Vicenti, Rose, this was fabulous and intimidating for me. Great job of explaining. I am so impressed of your perseverance throughout this year. I'm impressed. Do you have any career interests at this time? How will you use your new learning?
Oh, well, thank you. So I don't know if all of you know, but I'm going to Carnegie Mellon University next year, and they're pretty well known for their computer science department. But I'm thinking about focusing on neuroscience, but maybe minoring in computer science. And they have a degree called computational biology and computational neuroscience, which joins the two subject areas. So hopefully I'll use my new learning to do something with that, make it easier to do, stuff like that and join the two fields.
Amazing. So you definitely have a knack for it. So I'm glad to hear that you're going into it at school.
Oh, thanks.
Mrs. Fitting, Rose, you continue to amaze me. That was awesome, Mrs. Fitting.
Thank you.
Just one final comment on my end. I'm just really impressed how you took everything that happened with distance learning and the coronavirus, and you sort of embedded it into your project. And it's almost like it was meant to be, because the searching options that you did really showed the impact of your app and your website. And so it's just really interesting and really impressive how you twisted it into something positive.
Okay, thanks. I'm glad you liked it.
I did. I'm really impressed. If no one else has any other comments or questions, I think we're going to close up the night. Nice job. Do me a favor, send me the website link or post it to Classroom, because I'll be curious to do some, take a look at it on my own too. It's really, really cool. My husband's actually into coding and stuff, so I know he'll be interested to see your work.
Sounds good. Okay.
All right. Well, nice job tonight. And thank you everyone for joining us. I hope
Thank
you can
you.
join us tomorrow. We have some more presentations tomorrow afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.